Alright, so this video is going to show you how to solo the first encounter of the Ghosts of the Deep dungeon. It is a fairly lengthy video because this is my first completion and I'm kind of learning my way through it. And while I did edit out my fails and dilly-dallying and times I went AFK, you're just seeing here basically me wandering around the arcology for about 3 minutes, figuring out where to go, and then finding the ritual site, and then I snipped out everything in between there, and I just gave you the actual successful completion of the encounter. So this here is me going in totally blind, solo, fresh right now until I get to the ritual site. So I got no idea what I'm doing. I don't even think to pull out my ghost to take out my sparrow, and I did learn after the fact that you can sparrow through this whole section. But Titan's a new planet for me, so I'm kind of just soaking up the atmosphere and just liking the experience. So I didn't even use my sparrow once, which is partially why this encounter took a little longer than it probably should. But I'll talk more about some of the non-mechanic based stuff after we cover the initial mechanics. I'll cover a little bit about my impressions of Season of the Deep, what I think about the problem with open world in Destiny as a game, and of course I'll cover some of the loadouts that I chose or contemplated using when going into this blind. But right now I'm just looking at stuff, taking note of things that stand out. Like, I've never been to the arcology on Titan because I wasn't playing Destiny when Titan was available as a planet to patrol and play in. So I'm like, oh, what are these horizontal lights? Are they trying to tell me something? I'm trying to like take note of these little details. And I don't even think I've pulled out my ghost yet to see if, like, what's the objective. All right, here it is. Locate the ritual site. Find the Lucid Hive ritual site. Okay, that should be obvious, right? Like a ritual site should be a pretty obvious standout thing. So let's look for it, and then we'll see what to do from there. That must be the ritual site. Okay, so we got 4 totems. And basically, what we need to do is obviously rally up. And then there's going to be 2 knights at the back of the map. Nothing really happens until you kill those two knights, until you engage with them. So let's go shoot the knights and see what happens. Using necrotic grips here to spread poison with arcane needle and osteostriga. Cover more about that loadout. So basically, once you kill these 2 knights, there's going to be an ogre right here. And the ogre is going to spawn on one of the 3 roads leading up to the ritual site. There's a road down the middle, road to the right, road to the left. Whichever road the ogre is coming down, obviously you kill the ogre. And then once you do that, then you follow the road that the ogre died at. And there's going to be a little green miasma type trail, if you remember those from the Throne World, from some of the Deep Site 3 puzzles and stuff like that. It's like a green trail with a bunch of bugs. That is pointing you in the general direction of a symbol site that you need to get to So here it is. It's a symbol just floating up in the middle of nowhere. You get close enough, a bunch of orange bars are going to spawn with usually 2 wizards and a whole bunch of acolytes. Once you kill the 2 wizards, then a new pathway will be revealed. And it will be a green miasma type trail. It says the way forward is revealed on the left side of my screen. So part of doing these things solo blind is you really have to pay attention to the text. So each of these sites is random, right? But the trail will point you in the general direction, and there's going to be 3 of these sites that we need to go to and kill everything. And all 3 sites share the exact same symbol, right? The symbol will be random from the start, but the first symbol that you see, that will be the same symbol for the next 2 sites. And you need to remember that symbol. So make a note of it in your head, whatever you want to call it. I'm sure the community has like a generic call out system for these symbols, especially if you're in like a fire team and whatnot. But for me, I'm just calling this lines, or E, right? It's the horizontal lines. The next pathway has been revealed, so we're going to go find that. And on this 3rd and final site, once we kill the wizards, there's going to be a Lucent Hive that's going to appear. It's either going to be a warrior, or it's going to be a wizard, or it's going to be an acolyte. That is also random, but it doesn't matter. You just kill it. If you want, you can use your super. You can use blinding grenades. You can use some form of crowd control. But I've got a pretty powerful loadout here with Necrotic Grips and Striga and Arcane Needle. And I learned through a little bit of trial and error that I wanted to save my super for the section after this. So it is up to you how you want to go about it. If you want to use your super here, that's fine. Just be mindful, you're going to have to take care of some enemies fairly quickly when you get back to the ritual site. Alright, so we've got an acolyte, and I make sure that I'm in a healing rift and next to a piece of cover, because all of these Lucent Hive can kill you fairly fast. Kill the ghost, or finish the ghost, and now I have a Vestige of Light buff on the left side of my screen at 1:10 seconds. Total, you get about 1:20 from once you finish the ghost. And what that buff does is it gives you the ability to place the symbol at the correct totem at the ritual site. And you have to do it in time or you die. So once you get back to this ritual site, the key enemy that you're looking for is a yellow bar wizard. You need to nuke the yellow bar wizard. It will drop a deep sight. You reveal the deep sight, it shows you where the symbols are. You dunk on the right totem. If you dunk on the wrong totem, you're dead. So that's why I saved my super there, was because, and I didn't realize that you can use a sparrow. I could have got to the ritual site a lot quicker. I could have had a lot more time on the clock. I would have felt less pressure to use my super. But now, you know, I did this without realizing that I could use my sparrow and save time that way. So it worked fine for me to do it this way. I just, on each run, I saved my super basically for the ritual site. And so there's 4 totems, so you guessed it, we're going to have to do this 4 times. Once you dunk that first symbol, then the ogre will respawn on one of the random roadways. In this case, it is the same roadway as the first time, but it can be totally random. However, like I said, whichever road the ogre comes down, it will, as far as I know, it will always be that roadway that you need to follow to find the next symbol. So, pretty straightforward encounter. Now it's redundant. You're just doing everything 3 times, and as you do these, you kind of learn where each site is. You'll figure out like, oh, this miasma trail is... They're very vague directions, but you'll learn over time like what trail leads to what site. So the next symbol we have is kind of that X with the V's. A lot of these symbols are very similar, so it would probably be helpful for you to write out the symbols, create your own mental notes for them, because you're going to need them throughout the dungeon, at least up to the 2nd encounter. I don't know much about the 3rd encounter because I haven't played it. I've only, last night when I was streaming this, I streamed for about 3 hours, and I was just on the 2nd encounter, the first boss fight. So I didn't make it through that yet, and I didn't make it to the boss fight. So that's as far as I know, but I can tell you that the mechanics in this encounter are going to be fairly similar throughout the entire dungeon, or at least up to the first boss fight. So you may as well learn those symbols and figure out how you're going to remember to identify them. So yeah, Titan's a new planet for me. So you can see I'm kind of taking my time where I can. If I'm not on the Vestige of Light timer and I'm not pressured, I'm just kind of like roaming around, figuring out what to do, but mostly just kind of enjoying this space. I like it. I was originally hoping for a Lucent Hive dungeon, like before there was leaks coming out about it being Lucent Hive. Basically, after Spire the Watcher released, I was hoping that the next dungeon would be Hive, Lucent Hive, and I was hoping it would be in Throne World because I really love the Throne World. I love the architecture, the greenery mixed with the red and the white Gothic architecture. Yeah, it's just really cool. And the Lucent Hive, as far as an enemy type, are interesting, kind of in the same way that Tormentors are interesting. I feel like maybe we're a little bit too powerful for them at their base level. Like this dungeon, I think, is at 1790. So I'm 20 overpowered. I think the enemy power level increases probably encounter to encounter, because that is often the case for dungeons. But I feel like we've learned how to handle the Lucent Hive, and they're not as challenging as they could be. Tormentors are a little bit more challenging, and there's a little more pressure involved with dealing with Tormentors. Once you get to like Grandmaster level, that's obviously like for Nightfall's GMs, that's a different story, because then the Lucent Hive, like especially the warriors, they can one-shot kill you with their suppressor grenades and their shield throw, so that's a bit different. But for this, I'm already 20 overpowered. You know, the Hive warriors are not that big of a deal. But yeah, so I stayed off the internet all day yesterday because I didn't want the theme or the look to be spoiled. I wanted to go in blind and solo and kind of experience it for myself. So at first I thought, well, when I read that in the leaks that it was going to be Lucent Hive, I kind of assumed that it was going to be Throne World. So I was like, I felt corroborated that I was, you know, what I hoped for and imagined was going to be correct. But it turns out when you log in, you actually have to go to the Helm to find the dungeon, which is a little odd. But I guess that makes sense because Titan is only available as for seasonal content, and seasonal content falls within the Helm. So I'm assuming that after this year is done for Lightfall, and we lose all of the helm locations for each season, I assume that the dungeon will still be in the helm. If not, it'll be somewhere else, because they're not going to vault this dungeon, I sure hope. But yeah. So anyways, I'm really liking Titan, but I was really hoping with this season that we were gonna get a new patrol zone with a really good public activity, like Nightmare Containment from Season of the Haunted, and I think it was the same development team from Bungie, because I think they alternate seasons. So like Season of the Haunted and Season of the Seraph was the same team as this Season of the Deep, and those were my two favorite seasons from the Witch Queen year last year. So yeah, my hopes were fairly high, and I feel like when the season launched, it was a bit of a letdown, because there's no patrol zone. Like I wouldn't care if it was just a small space and part of Titan. Like, I found that the derelict Leviathan was a perfect size for a patrol zone, and like 6-man servers. So like it would actually be fairly boring if you gave us like a whole planet to explore, but then there's only like, 6 random people in this giant space. You're never running into anybody. Like, sometimes you're doing public activities alone. That to me is not very engaging. The Nightmare Containment activity on the derelict Leviathan was perfect. It was an engaging experience. It was a perfect size patrol zone, and more importantly, it was a place that you can just kind of load into and then just stay there, and you don't feel pressured to get a mission done in X amount of minutes and seconds, and then then you're sent back straight back to orbit automatically, and then you got to sit in a loading screen, sit in a matchmaking queue, just to go back into that world and be pressured to get out of the world. I like activities, match-made activities, missions that are on timers for what they are. I do them all the time, but I also like the open world in Destiny. It just feels to me like there's so much wasted potential. Like, we have all these beautiful spaces in the Destiny universe on these planets, and nothing is going on there. You hardly ever run into anybody. The enemies are unchallenging. The public activities are boring. I feel like if Destiny can do so well at balancing itself between being a first-person shooter, gunplay, with role-playing mechanics or build crafting, magic, and that kind of stuff. Destiny, better like as a looter shooter, MMO / RPG / first-person shooter, it does the genre better than anybody. And the art design is also outstanding. So we've got all these open world spaces, but then they're not engaging. So I feel like there's just so much room for improvement on that front. And Nightmare Containment was a step in the right direction. So I think we could have just got more of that. We could have got more terminal overloads, more Altars of Sorrow, more Nightmare Containment, make them better, make the enemies more challenging, make the loot better. Like, Nightmare Containment was good because if you decided to join that activity while it was happening, and you didn't have to, if you wanted to just go do patrols in another section, go for it. But if you join the public activity and finish it, usually it's everybody's involved, 6 people are involved, and you get good loot. You get chance at red borders, you get a whole bunch of glimmer, you get ascendant alloys. So it was just a rewarding activity to do. Terminal Overload, I think, like, had the right idea, and I was pretty excited for it at first, but it's too big of a zone, and it's inconsistent being in different locations. Like, I'm sorry, but Liming Harbor and Ahimsa Park are just not. They're very dull and depressing spaces. Zephyr Concourse version of Terminal Overload is pretty good, visually speaking. But still, the spaces are too big. The event is a bit too long. There's too many, like, quote-unquote encounters of the activity, and you have to travel too far to get to them, which kind of breaks up the immersion, in my opinion. And so, Terminal Overload was okay, but could have been done better. And you know, once I got my loot out of them, like the rolls I wanted on the machine gun, the SMG, the shotgun, like, I really don't have any reason to ever do them again, because it's not like it's a good spot to go and level up weapons. Like Nightmare Containment was good for that, because there was ad density everywhere. You didn't have to travel far to get to enemies. You could just stay in one spot and literally kill non-stop and level up your crafted weapons that way. You can't do that with Terminal Overload, especially when you got those threshers that are still seem to be busted, killing you instantly. But anyways, yeah, so I hope Bungie could do a little bit more with the open world stuff, and maybe give us more access to it, and maybe not limit us to activities that are like on a timer and a mission and it's match made. It's a shame, because this is a really cool space to play in here. Fortunately, I like doing dungeons, so it may inspire me to just do this dungeon a little bit more. But yeah, it would have been really cool to get a Nightmare Containment style control zone activity on some small portion of Titan. But anyways, so doing this blind and solo, like I said, is new for me. I did duality in a fire team blind, and that was a cool experience. Spire, I kind of spoiled it for myself a little bit before going into it, and none of these dungeons I did solo first try, so this was totally new to me. I've never even really done day one raid races or anything like that, so like learning the mechanics is going into something blind, and learning how to do it yourself is fairly new to me. So one of the things that you want to consider before going into any dungeon, solo or not, is you kind of have to, if you're doing it blind, you have to speculate on what build to run and what weapons to pick. So generally speaking, I think it's natural to just pick the best of the best. I didn't 100% do that, because if I wanted to pick the best of the best, for me, I would have just gone with Sunbreaker and Syntheseps or Lorelei Splendor and a healing grenade, and I just would have bonked my way through everything, knowing that I could probably just survive everything. I feel like Sunbreaker is just kind of the default choice for doing things blind, because of the I think it's kind of a broken subclass. Like the throwing hammer is a little ridiculous. Like, and they buffed the throwing hammer, so now it has tracking. So now not only do you have an infinite charged melee ability that gives you Sol Invictus sunspots, orbs of power, and armor charge on demand, and Cure and Roaring Flames ×3, and if you're using Synthoseps biotic enhancements, yeah, you could just have that all the time. Sure, that's not broken. I don't know. I don't think there's any other subclass in the game out of all 15 subclasses that has an infinite melee that they can use like that. I'm honestly shocked that there hasn't been a cooldown implemented on the throwing hammer. Like, even if it's like a 4-second cooldown, that would break up the viability of Sunbreaker as being like the one and only choice to use to do stuff blind or solo blind or day one stuff. But I mean, it is fun to play, so that would have been my choice. Would have been to go with Sunbreaker, but I wanted to stream this, and I wanted to use something a little bit different, and I wanted to use something that I thought would be thematic to a Lucent Hive style dungeon. And I did my duality on Titan, solo flawless. I did Spire on Hunter, so this is my chance to do something with Warlock, and I thought that Broodweaver would be a good choice, just because, like, if it was going to be like a green environment with Hive, then I could just, I could be a wizard myself with Threadlings and all that, and deal with it that way. But anyway, so that's what I did. Osteostriga, Necrotic Grips, Forbearance, the Swarm. I mean, Osteostriga pretty much did everything for me with Necrotic Grips and Arcane Needle, just like poison everything. So if you want to go for a Broodweaver build, it's pretty good to go with. Anyways, I'm going to be streaming later, hopefully to finish the second encounter. So I will post something after I complete that. Talk to you later. Take care.